25 years of Sabyasachi Mukherjee. It's also 25 years of Shereen Bhan. So we truly have a remarkable duo on stage. Shereen, over to you.
Now, this is of course a wonderful coincidence. It's 25 years of Sabyasachi Mukherjee and it's 25 years of CNBC-TV18. So we couldn't have planned this better, Sabya. Thank you so much for joining us, and what an honor and a pleasure to have you join us here this evening.
Thank you. Likewise. This crowd makes me very nervous, but
this crowd makes you nervous, guys. Really? Should we give them a big cheer before we start? But yes, Sabya, this is where I want to start by talking to you. 25 years ago, when you decided that you were going to veer into the world of fashion, as a young man from Calcutta, I know that you were inspired by your grandmothers, both paternal as well as maternal, and you had a very strong backing of some strong women who've shaped your narrative, who've shaped your storytelling. But when you look back at your journey so far, is there a sense of disbelief sometimes? You know, do you have to pinch yourself to say, how did I get here?
not really. You know, I was always sure of what I would do, but I wouldn't have done it without the women in my life. You know, as a man, I might have birthed Sabyasachi, but it's the women who raised Sabya. And I think whether my grandmothers, whether the women in Calcutta, and they're very strong, and I think the women in that city lead. I think they've always urged me to follow my dreams. And I think at a time when you have a dream and you have a conviction, when your conviction is shared by people around you, then you realize that it just makes the journey a little more easier.
Speaking of the journey, and you said you always knew or you always believed that you were going to make this what it is today. What was the ambition 25 years ago? I mean, what did you imagine Sabyasachi Mukherjee to be?
You know, when you grow up in Calcutta, I mean, culture becomes a default setting because, you know, whether you like it or not, it becomes a part of your life through osmosis. A lot of people in my family are educationists. From my mother's side, people are doctors. You know, my mother's a painter. And, you know, I've grown up seeing world cinema, listening to music, reading great literature. You know, my father's elder brother used to take me to all the film festivals to watch movies. And, you know, I've always felt at a time, you know, when I was seeing Ray and Ghatak and Govind Nihalani, and I used to read books and, you know, read Tagore. I never felt India was a third world country. You know, I always felt India was a first world civilization. And I was like, why are we not doing our best to represent ourselves right? Because there is so much of misrepresentation of India. And I think within that, I saw an opportunity. And I said that, you know, I know that at some point of time we'll get to the top. It's just a matter of time, and I wanted to start the journey 25 years ago.
Well, and kudos for you for making that journey. But, you know, you talked about India being on top of the world, and often the storytelling around India has been stereotypical. And as you look at taking the India story global with your brand, with Sabyasachi, and taking the world by storm, so to speak, you know, what is the ambition that you have now to create a premium luxury brand out of India for the world?
You know, I always believe that the world is round and history is cyclical. And if you just look at India's cultural heritage, you know, we were the golden country, and everything was plundered, taken away from us. And a lot of it was appropriated. You know, a lot of what I see as global luxury, if you look at the genesis of it or the roots of it, it comes from this country. And I think it's time that some of us took it back home. And, you know, I don't know how far I'm going to, you know, when I sold my company to Kumar Mangalam, I told him only one thing, that Mr. Birla, the company does not belong to me, does not belong to you. It belongs to the country at large. And we have to do it right, because what happens is there is a lot of younger generation of artists and students who look up to the brand. And as a middle-class boy, if I could have broken the glass ceiling, I don't know how far I will be able to take this journey forward, but a lot of people will come up and say, if he could do it, so can I. I think for me, the legacy would be to leave behind a possibility that if we decide to do it collectively, India is going to go straight on the top.
Well, you know, more power to you and more power to the people that you're working with to ensure that that vision, in fact, is a reality. But, you know, speaking about selling your business to Kumar Mangalam Birla, and your journey as an entrepreneur, the decision to actually, in a way, move back, give up, whatever you'd like to, or however you'd like to see it, was that a tough emotional decision? Or did you believe that it was the right thing to do for the brand?
I'd already planned it, always. You see, I'm not a selfish entrepreneur, because when you create something that becomes bigger than who you are, with possibilities that can change and shape the trajectory of a country, you have to step back and realize that it doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to the people. And I still remember I was, I had already made up my mind that I would do it, but I remember, and if that girl is listening to this telecast, I was at the New Delhi airport, and a girl meets me at the airport post-COVID, and she says, "Mr. Mukherjee, I just wanted to come and tell you that you cannot die." And I was like, and that was a strange conversation to have. And I was like, "Why would you say this to me?" And she said, "No, we look up to you. You have so much of idealism in your business. What will happen to us? Because your brand continues to inspire us." And I called up Kumar the next day. I said, "Okay, fine,
I'm ready.
Let's do the deal." No, we have been talking for a very long time. And you see, often what happens is when personal hubris of an entrepreneur takes over, then you decide to keep the baby or the child just for yourself. And then you grow old, and then you can't transition, and the brand dies with you. And I was very clear that, it doesn't matter what happens to me, Sabya has to live on. And I don't have any children. And even if I had children, I don't believe in nepotism. I would not give it to them if they were not qualified enough or the right people to transition it to. And I said that, okay, let's collectively create a corporate Sabya, and let me spend the next 20 years transitioning it, so that even, when I leave, this brand is going to stay on.
This brand is going to stay on. But, speaking of nepotism, Sabya, and I don't know if it's true, but have you really decided that you're not going to design for Bollywood anymore?
No, I didn't say that. I said I never said
That's
that.
I'm not sure if it's true, so I'm asking you.
No, I never said that. I think me and Bollywood has had a great partnership. But, I think the way people look at communication keeps changing. And I think there was a time when people were underconfident, and they needed to have influencers and leaders to look up to feel good about themselves. The good thing about the internet is it connected a lot of people. And when you feel like you're a minority and you start connecting with people, and then you realize that you have a community, your confidence rises. And today, I think what's happening, if I look at the influencers, the biggest Sabyasachi influencers are the customers. They don't feel they are any less than Bollywood. And I think the narrative has shifted from influencers. Anyways, I've never really used Bollywood on my runway. Deepika was the only exception. I told her that when I was doing my 25-year show, this is probably the first and the last time that I'll use a Bollywood star, because this was a special moment. We've had a great relationship, personal relationship together. And I truly think in so many ways she represents Brand India. But I think we've always focused on our consumers, because for us, our consumers are the real stars.
Well, the consumers are the stars. So let's talk about the consumer, not just the Indian consumer, but also the global consumer that you're hoping to tap into now, Sabya. What's changed? You talked about social media. You talked about the world of influencers and content creators, and how that's also shaping the choices that consumers make. In your experience, as someone who understands the fashion industry, as someone who's been part of the fashion industry, what's the big change that you're seeing in terms of consumption and consumer behavior today?
I think self-confidence and self-expression. Truth be told, and I've said this in many forums, that fashion has made a lot of money by feeding on people's insecurities. So the more insecure you kept your consumer, the more they wanted to buy your product, because they wanted to feel good about themselves. But what fashion didn't realize for the longest time, that the consumer was getting smarter and sharper. And anyways, I think the Indian consumer is probably the smartest consumer in the world. And, I think that when you have and also at a time, a lot of luxury goods were consumed by the idle rich. Today, if you look at the people who are really buying luxury in India, everybody's working, nobody has time, everybody's self-reliant, everybody has self-confidence, everybody has self-expression. And, then the consumer shifts from being brand supreme to product supreme. A consumer just wants to buy the right product, not the right brand. And at Sabyasachi, we want to get the product right. Whether the brand becomes a super brand or not, it's an outcome of the product, not the brand. And I think globally, when the consumer is going to now realize that that luxury is based on rarity, craftsmanship, authenticity, and provenance. Where else can you find a luxury product more unique than what you would find in India? So I think whether people, no matter what happens, no matter how much artfully the spin doctors and the global markets try to dominate India, they can't put India in a corner because it's just not going to be possible because the consumers won't let them.
You can't put India in a corner. So, let's talk about the strategy now to ensure that you actually tap into this big opportunity. You're in the heart of New York City, Sabya, today, and I know that there's been a lot of chatter around just what you've been able to create and how you've been able to showcase India there. What's the initial learning and the experience been of taking Brand India global?
Even before I took it to America, I think so much of how America views India is so stereotypical. Firstly, I wanted to change that and break that, and I always feel that luxury is built from a point of confidence and never from a point of subjugation. And the problem has always been that we have never believed in ourselves for the longest time. And I think that when you start believing in who you are, and that's when the dynamics change.
Well, speaking of the dynamics changing, and you were talking about the consumer and the consumer being your biggest influencers, so to speak. The Sabya bride, you kind of turned that on its head, right? I mean, the Indian brides were always coy, demure, shy. There was almost this invisibilization, and you kind of turned that around completely. How did that happen? I mean, was this because of the influence of the strong women in your life? What was it that you were trying to tell by way of attempting to sort of turn this on its head?
See, I don't really understand gender inequality because in my head it doesn't exist. I've been raised by, thank you. And, sometimes I tell that, the problem with gender inequality actually starts with bad parenting. Because I think if you raise your boys to believe that they're not better than women, but they're equal to women, I think men will be far more sensitive to gender parity than they are today. And, I have grown up with women who I've looked up to. My friends growing up, my girlfriends growing up, they were very strong women. And, I was in awe of them. And let's talk about the bridal market, for instance. So I'll tell you a small story. So I meet a lot of women in India, mothers in India, who believe that I can matchmake for their daughters. And
Can you?
no, I don't even have a social life. So, and then they come and tell me that, I have a real problem. I'm not being able to sleep at night. I said, why? I said, my daughter's not getting married. She refuses to get married. And I'm like, all right. And she's 36. Her biological clock is ticking. Maybe she'll not be able to produce children. I'm like, all right. I said, okay, I want to ask you a question. Where did you send your daughter for education? She said, I sent my daughter to Stanford. I said, So you will send your daughter to Stanford. You will give her the best of education. You will give her wisdom. You will give her experience. You will give her confidence. And then you'll tell her to come back, be subjugated to my man, and make babies. I said, that doesn't work anymore. So, the way we look at weddings in this country is also going to shift because, today, women have realized, either through communication or through social media or just being there, watching forums like this, that they don't need a man always to fulfill their destinies. They can do it themselves. And so the entire construct of marriages in India, which was about patriarchy trying to, so I'll tell you, there were so many reasons why people got married. Sometimes it was never love. Sometimes it was an escape. Sometimes it was just an arrangement, like a business arrangement. And sometimes it was just a hopelessness that my life would change. But today in India, when I see younger kids, they don't even come with their parents to buy a bridal outfit. They'll come, they're wearing jeans and they'll come with an American Express card. They'll swipe the card and say, I can't even come for a fitting because I have a boardroom meeting. Just send the outfit home. And I see how the country has changed. When I look at my stores and I look at my consumers, I could not believe that these consumers would have existed 20 years ago. So India has completely changed.
Isn't that a very small minority that we're still talking about, Sabya?
There is something called trickle down, But even if it exists on top, slowly and slowly it's going to trickle down. You know, what excites me is the fact that there is visible change. I'm not going to quantify the change, but what gives me hope, if change exists, it's going to percolate. It's just a matter of time.
Well, we certainly hope so, and we hope that it speeds up, and that's the pace of change that we're hoping to accelerate here through these conversations. But what excites you today? Besides the work that you're already doing, is there a passion project that you're working on? Is film something that you would want to consider as part of the future creative endeavors?
No, my plate is full. There's so much to do. What excites me today is actually the young India. I think what's happened earlier, in India, status was defined by money or the distance of money between people to people. But right now, for young India, status is defined by purpose. And I think that when you look at the younger children, and there are many women who are in this room will say that, my child does not understand me. We have a huge generation gap because of the fact that the way I think of what is important and what my child thinks is important is very drastic and very dramatic. I think for a lot of people in the country, because probably because of the British rule or the traumas of the partition, I think one of the biggest thing was about making money. It was never even about making wealth, which is one of the reasons I think the country never lived up to its greatest potential. But the younger children today are being able to realize how to create business with both the hard power and the soft power of the country. And they want to create business that generates wealth and not generate just money. And I think there's a lot of hope that with that, with that new wave of Indian entrepreneurs who are coming in with idealism. They don't want to gather black money like their parents. They want to have global businesses. They want to make sure that the businesses get valued globally, recognized globally, and they want to create businesses where they can harness both the soft power and the hard power of the country.
Well, wealth and value creation and a sense of purpose driving that, that's certainly, hopefully going to be the way forward for India's first generation entrepreneurs. And you're right, we're seeing a plethora of them at this point in time. But, there's something very interesting about you, Sabya, and I think that in the context of the conversations that we're having here about women and around women, is important to hear what you have to say. You don't believe in perfection. You, in fact, believe in the magic of imperfection, right?
Perfection is so much of a societal construct that, I think, we are constantly telling people that you're not good enough to be able to make them buy more. And, somewhere down the line, this constant, this constant marketing to tell people that you need to buy more because you're not good enough doesn't really work because A, it's not sustainable. Secondly, you lose the confidence of the consumer because then the consumer is saying, okay, you know what, this is enough, I'm walking out. I think you grow businesses beautifully by giving your consumers confidence that you're just good the way you are. And, at Sabya, we have always said that to our consumers because I don't think we try to create imagery that is so far away that you can't reach. I think
Price tags.
No, there's a reason for the price tag. See, one of the greater agendas of Sabya is also to keep craft harnessed at its highest stages. And let me tell you, a lot of my craftspeople are women. And I think, if you don't rise the price of craft up, if you don't rise the acknowledgement of craft up, craft is going to disappear. I say that, there is a lot that a lot of global economies can do that India cannot do yet. But there's a lot that India can do that other countries can never do, and that comes from India's soft power. And I think if corporate India was not to understand how valuable India's soft power is, and if we didn't do it to protect it, craft needs to be made into a business. Craft should not be about pledges and charity and help. Craftsmen need to get their children back into the business. And I've always said, I've seen this movie called Help, where a lady tells another woman that, courage often skips a generation. And I took a little from there and I said, courage can skip a generation, but craft cannot. Because if craft skips a generation, craft dies. And if India's craft was to die, India's soft power would crash. I think this country still probably does not realize, and corporate India still probably does not realize how powerful India's soft power is and how, You can have medical services, you can have IT, but a lot of other countries can do that too. But what you can do with your soft power, because it is so unique to this country, nobody else can do.
No, and that's a very, very important point that you make. But do you worry today, Sabya, that we are at a point which is almost an existential crisis for a whole host of arts and artisans across this country? I mean, you were talking about the fact that this shouldn't be treated like a charity. It shouldn't be treated like a CSR project. What kind of interventions do you believe we need at this point in time to ensure that we keep this soft power alive?
We don't need to do much because evolution will take care of itself. Because I'll tell you, so we were at the age of influence, which is moving into the age of intelligence. AI is going to come in. And I personally think that AI in many sectors, especially in performing arts and art, will be very short-lived. Because after the age of intelligence will come the age of wisdom. And when the age of wisdom comes in and people realize that the greatest gift to humanity is humans themselves and we should not robotize our existence so much that we forget to be human beings, then people will realize that art and craft is going to be the most important expression of humanity. We don't have to do much. Evolution will take care of itself.
We certainly hope so. We certainly hope so. But, what keeps you grounded? What keeps you sane? What keeps you centered in the world that you live in? How do you ensure that Sabya stays true to who Sabya is?
Calcutta, my friend circle from school, for them, if I'm talking about the fact that, I could not make a shipment in time, they will say, what are you talking about? I have real problems. My child failed in geography. And also my family, my aunts, when I go to a wedding and go to a family wedding, they'll ask me 2 questions. And, and I have the answer for the first one, the second I can't answer ever. Because they say, who wears your clothes and where do they go? So I think there's always reality check when you're in Calcutta.
There always is a reality check. But who's your current muse? Where are you drawing inspiration from today?
Tagore had a very beautiful poem which loosely translated said that, I've traveled all over the world looking for beauty. I've spent a lot of money, traveled over forests and hills, only to realize when I came back home that beauty lay on a dewdrop on a blade of grass right next to my doorstep. And I'm 51, I've traveled all over the world, and when I come back home to my muse, which is Calcutta.
That is wonderful. That is wonderful. But as you look back at your entrepreneurial journey, and for many women and men who are watching this, what are some of the lessons, some of the non-negotiables that you would leave us with in wanting to set something up that has an enduring legacy that lives beyond you?
I could go on and on, but I'll make it. I think idealism matters. I think what also matters is excellence, because I think the problem that I face with a lot of people is we constantly keep shortchanging excellence for profit. That's not sustainable. If you look at Hermes, for instance, they were never shortchanged excellence, and they're probably one of the most profitable company with a very strong EBITDA. And they continued to grow when every other brand was in crisis. And to entrepreneurs, I would only say something that, don't complain about your journey. Because if you're an entrepreneur, you're supposed to be alone. Because if you're a visionary, you're always going to be ahead of everybody else. Don't complain if people don't understand, because you have to believe in yourself. Again, quoting Tagore, he had said that, the fight or the tempest is not outside, it's within you. You have to overcome your own fears. It's always going to be a hard journey. It's always going to be a tiring journey, and it's always going to be a lonesome journey. But if you stay on the path, there will always be light at the end of the tunnel. Don't give up.
Don't give up. And to the women who wear Sabya and those who aspire to wear Sabya as well, what would you tell them?
I remember when Sushmita Sen got married, she became Miss Universe, and she said something about women. And I just say, I think it's such a privilege to be born a woman. Because you see, I think there is so much of sensitivity that you have that a man will never have. And today, when the world goes to an age of wisdom, I think women will lead because, I've always said that, between IQ and EQ, EQ is way higher and it's very rare. And I find a lot of EQ in women because women truly understand the meaning of empathy.
There was a reason we called him the feminist, and it's very, very clear why. But Sabyasachi Mukherjee, are there spaces, untapped spaces, virgin territory that you haven't forayed into yet that you would like to foray into?
Well, I would like to make a movie someday, and I want to get into the food and beverage and hospitality business. My friends have been telling me for the longest time. But there's a lot more to do. There's beauty coming in, there's sunglasses coming in, shoes coming in.
Sunglasses company, shoes company, beauty company, all of that.
Yeah, we've just got into fine arts. So it's a beautiful life. There are more and more people coming from all over the world wanting to work with us because what we've done is we've managed to create an exceptional brand because I've never shortchanged idealism for profit. It had been a very long journey. It has been a very painful journey. But, we've reached the tipping point where we are realizing that it's beginning to pay off.
So if there was to be a movie on Sabyasachi Mukherjee, what would it be called?
My life in Calcutta.
Sabya, thank you so much for joining us here this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, Sabyasachi Mukherjee, we wish you the very best of luck with all your future endeavors. The next 25 years, may they bring you more success, more happiness, and may you truly take India global. Thank you so much for your time here this
Thank you,
evening.
everyone.
Thank you very, very much.
What an inspiring conversation. Once again, a huge thank you to the phenomenal Sabyasachi Mukherjee for sharing such powerful insights on the influence of strong women, the beauty of imperfections, and his journey of building a unique and timeless brand. Your stories and vision have truly enriched back on stage. And now, if you thought the inspiration peaked, think again. Tonight isn't just about discussions, it's about celebrating action, impact, and leadership. We're about to honor the women who aren't just envisioning a better future, they are building it, they are leading it, and redefining what's possible. These trailblazers have shattered barriers, transformed industries, and inspired